People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Come on, just tell me, what's playing here?
Star Wars, right? Star Wars? Star Wars? Yes!
When I was a kid, they used to show these short films before the feature called serials, and they weren't very good. In fact, they were actually kind of terrible in a wonderful sort of way because you could almost imagine the actors suddenly turning to look out at you and saying, look, we know you can tell we made these sets out of cardboard. And we know you can see the wires holding up our spaceships. But look how much fun we're having. And those stupid little films meant more to me than any big budget Hollywood extravaganza because they gave me hope.
Cut!
That with a little allowance.
You okay?
No, I'm not okay.
A little ingenuity and a little stolen time. With my dad's old wind-up movie camera, I could make movies too, and I did. Boy, did I. How much do you want to be a director, Patrick?
I want it more than anything I've ever wanted in my life.
Hi.
Are you really sure about this?
Do you need to be one? Then you might just make it.
You really think so?
If it can happen to me, it can happen to you.
Get out!
I can't get there from here, and you can't get here from there, and we can't go anywhere as long as we're still standing on this road that leads nowhere.
Just remember something. Life doesn't move at 24 frames per second. It moves a lot faster. And on this picture, you only get one roll of film.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I am talking with Patrick Reed Johnson about his brand new-ish. It's been in the works for 18 years. His film, 5/22/77. It's a very personal story about young Patrick Reed Johnson and how he saw Star Wars, got involved with special effects. Really an interesting story. Really great movie. We spoke about it back in 2017, the movie that exists now, quite a bit different. And you'll hear why that is and how all this stuff happened in this interview. I hope you enjoy hearing it as much as I enjoyed talking with Mr. Johnson.
Well, gosh, we have been talking for a long time about 5/25/77. I can't even imagine how you feel.
There were several dead bodies in the backyard from people who asked me recently, so what's next? I killed them and buried them. Now, it actually is this pervasive sense of calm. Like, I don't have anything left hanging over me. Of course, I'm constantly getting besieged by what the hell took so long? Why did it take 18 years to make this movie? And it's as simple. I mean, the answer is kind of ridiculous. For 18 years, well, the first 2 years, we had an issue that one of the original investors came up about $40,000 short on their investment, which meant we couldn't shoot the Hollywood sequence. So we had the world's longest slug line that, the movie's going along and then 30 minutes of Pat goes to Hollywood. But we managed to cut together enough footage, raise enough money to really do the Hollywood sequence the way we wanted. And then we got it all done and people were like, great, wait a minute. you've got this great soundtrack with Supertramp and Queen and Ringo Starr and 10cc and all these artists, right? Alan Parsons. How you paying for that? Because we got an incredible deal on the music because the artists liked the movie and Alan Parsons knew a lot of the people involved. And we kind of collapsed millions of dollars worth of licensing fees down to something affordable, but nobody was willing to pay for it. You pay for it and we'll release your movie. It literally took until MVD, who had been Eric Wilkinson, bless him, man. He came to the 2008 screening at the Star Wars Celebration 4 in Los Angeles. And afterwards, he walked up and he goes, "Can I distribute this movie through MVD?" And I said, "Do you have $200,000 to pay for the music?" And he said, "No." And then every year since then, he's called up and said, "Can I distribute your movie?" I said, "Do you have $200,000? And he's like, "No." Until 2020, he calls up and he goes, "Can I distribute your movie?" And I said, "Do you have?" And he goes, "Yes." I convinced my boss to pay for the music. I mean, we literally were looking around for that many years. Now, the cool part about that is for that many years, I got to tinker with the film and actually change it to what I didn't even know it was always meant to be, which was amazing because, we teach something in film school, called thesis, where, there's something inherently underneath the story you're telling that is the thesis of the film. And sometimes you don't really know what that thesis is, even when you've written it. You don't find it until you've gathered these scenes and these performances and the feelings, and you start to put it together. Sometimes you know exactly what your thesis is, but other times you don't. And it took all these years until just probably 2018, 2019 for me to go, oh, I know what I'm doing here. And it's not what I set out to do. So that was really interesting.
Because there's always that danger if you're working on this for 18 years straight that you're just going to lose sight of things. Were you able to kind of put it aside for a little bit and then come back to it?
Yes. In fact, what was really fascinating was, first of all, my investors, they were incredible. All of these years, they never said, "Okay, that's it. You're done. Put it out there. Whatever it is, we don't care. They were much more interested in being good and seeing it the way we all wanted to see it, right? Finished, yes. But the money, as much as it meant to them, didn't mean as much as the thesis and the thematic. They wanted something great, or at least as great as we could do, with the materials at hand. So they were really gracious and really kind and supportive all this time. But you're right. There came a point right before I started teaching at UNCSA. There was a point where I just sort of said, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm stuck. The cuts I had were kind of mushy, and I was trying to keep things I didn't need to keep and trying to get rid of things I needed. Luckily, I went to film school for, 9 years, which I'd never done. I'd never gone to film school, but I was teaching at a film school, and I had something to impart, but I was also learning. I was actually learning from watching these young filmmakers struggling to find their theses, and to find the meaning in their films and to help them find that meaning. And it became more clearer and clearer to me what I needed to do to my film. So I finally actually retired early just a year ago so that I could concentrate completely on finishing the film and delivering it. But I felt like I had actually finally gone to film school because also my colleagues were brilliant, and, and they were all, the people that teach at UNCSA are all like legit filmmakers that you've heard of and have done amazing things. And so I was actually sort of, while being paid, I was being paid to go to film school by teaching, which is really interesting and fascinating. And there are a number of students who ended up working on the film, not because they were cheap labor, but because they were brilliant, and they did really amazing work. There's a young directing student of mine, Daniel Smith, who's now an associate producer on the film because he worked for a year and a half, almost 2 years, just nonstop on visual effects and reshoots and pickups and editing and all kind, and a bunch of other, Shaw Fisher, who was a cinematography student, came in and second unit directed and did the cinematography for the visual effects unit that did all the Pinto takeoff sequences and a lot of the miniature stuff that we did, the willfully cheesy moments that we actually spent more time and money trying to create willfully cheesy Super 8 films than we did on the digital stuff that you don't even notice,
Did you have a particular moment when you finally figured out that thesis, when you just said, that's it? Was there that what Oprah calls the aha moment?
I think so. I think when my mother passed away, who's a main character in the film, a big deal, obviously, for a lot of reasons. If you've seen the picture, obviously, I realized how much I loved all these characters, all these people, Robin and Bill, and all these people that knew more about me than I did at the time, like my mother, like my little brother, like my sister, who ultimately delivers me to my ultimate destiny. I mean, even though she pretends to hate me, and Steven and Herb Lightman. And what I needed was to write a love letter to them. I needed to thank them because had they not kicked me in the ass, I would never have gotten in that car and driven off into the sunset, as it were. Because originally I think that I was just licking my wounds. And when I wrote it, I think I was just sort of feeling sorry for myself a little bit. I'd gotten beaten up by Hollywood, partially my fault, but also partially Hollywood's fault. And I think what happened was that I realized that movie was navel gazing. That movie was, look at me, I was treated unfairly, whatever, and the more we were working on the film, even during the shooting, I started to realize how much I loved these people. And it's funny because, some of the real people are in the film playing older characters. Like, the guy, Todd, the theater owner, is the actual Bill. He's an actual best friend from high school and which is awesome. And the nurse that comes out and says, "Congratulations, it's a fist." That's the real Robin who swallowed her fist back in the day. So there's all these great cameos by the alumni of my life. And when my mom passed away, I realized that the heroes of this movie weren't the main character. The main character is trying to figure out who he is. He's a little defensive and he's beat up and he's kind of caustic in some ways. He's a little too big for his britches and he's a little holier than thou. And, and he's armored himself with defense mechanisms. And yet the people around him are like, dude, you're your own worst enemy. If you would just go, you've got abilities, you've got ambition, you certainly won't quit. So we can't stop you. So go, and Robin, interestingly, is the character who says it first. She's the one who says, before anyone even thinks he's going to Hollywood, she's like, "You're leaving, get out." He's like, what? He doesn't even know he's leaving yet, but she does.
I mean, it's not like you could go back and do a whole lot of reshoots. I mean, what with your main character, John Francis Daley, he's a man now. He starts as a boy.
There's a review that came out today that said, obviously, just like most movies, this movie is cast with people who are much older than teenagers, but they play them well, especially John Francis Daley, who's 37, but looks 17. And I actually wrote to him and I said, he was 20 years old when we started in 2004, so, but there were many reshoots. There was, the whole Hollywood sequence, all of that sequence was basically shot 2 years later after we raised money based on cutting together what we had and running around looking. And then over the next, decade, we would pick up things here and there, and John would send in, lines, and other actors would shoot stuff for us. And luckily Emmy Chen doesn't age. So she still looks like she did then. And so anything we needed to do, we picked up as we could. And then we started playing with certain tricks. I mean, there are some shots in the film right now where, John's face is pasted on a double. Actually, quite a few shots in the film, including, well, I don't want to give them away. Let people figure it out for themselves. Yeah, it's funny because we have 3 levels of visual effects in this film. We have what I call my John Knoll effects, my invisible effects, because John and I are old friends and he runs ILM and we've worked together on a bunch of stuff and best men at each other's weddings and stuff. And he did 4 shots in this film that you just wouldn't know that they were done by anybody, which is exactly what you want. And then we have what I call the close encounters effects, which are, visual effects the way they would have been done at their apex of ability by Doug Trumbull or Richard Urasich or these guys, or the guys at ILM, locked off matte paintings, not 3D matte paintings, but good matte paintings. I mean, Rocco Joffrey, who was one of the greatest matte painters, still is in the business, who worked on Close Encounters and Star Wars and every other damn film you can imagine that had a matte painting, did like 15 paintings for us on this film, and they're beautiful. And you won't see them. You won't notice unless you're really looking. I mean, an effects person or a trained eye is probably going to go, wait a minute. And then we have the willfully cheesy effects where we literally are trying to make it look like something I could do in my garage in 1979, so.
Did I read right that there's actually a documentary about this movie that's been made?
Sorta. My ex-girlfriend, Morgan Flores, who's a brilliant artist and filmmaker, who went on the Hearts of Darkness tour with us in 2012 when we were out crossing the country in my Ford Pinto with chase cars filled with GoPros and this giant RV called Large Marge. It was this 1970s RV that was turned into a mobile editing room. And my friend Ed Murphy and a bunch of other really fun people, James Gillette and these other people showed up, and we crossed the country. And it was meant to be like a 3-week trip from Wadsworth, Illinois to Hollywood. And it turned into like a 3-month journey because we would get someplace and run out of money. So we didn't have gas. We'd have to like raise money on the fly on fundraiser on Facebook. But we would go across the country showing the movie at places like, Devil's Tower, Wyoming, KOA campground, right beneath Devil's Tower, just to raise awareness and try to fundraise and that kind of stuff to get the money to pay for the damn music, right? We never raised enough to do that, but we did get awareness and Morgan and her documentary team shot what was meant to be a kind of Hearts of Darkness, like Apocalypse Now's, documentary that Francis's wife made about this journey to get this movie made. But by the time it was all over and all the drama and all the things that were done with it, at a certain point, Morgan decided, I'm going to make a movie about my journey across the country with these crazy people, including Patrick, and how it affected her personally. So it's not really a documentary anymore about the film. It's more of a the journey of an artist who, by the time the thing was over, we'd broken up and we're still traveling together in a Pinto, all alone with nobody else documenting this but us. Eventually maybe that movie will get seen and it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. But it's not so much about the movie anymore as it is more about an artist's journey, which I think it's kind of profound. I mean, there's rumors already of a special edition Blu-ray of our film. And so maybe it could be an extra feature on that. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, because it's come so close to being released before. I seem to remember there was like 2013, there was stuff going on. 2017, I think, is when you and I talked, and you're like, it's pretty much done other than the effects. But
the effects and the music. That was the issue. Yeah, because and the crazy part was, like in 2017, we did a little like stunt test release. That wasn't even a really a release, but we chose 32 theaters, just like Star Wars had, on May 25th, 2017, the anniversary, and one day only, sometimes one showing only. And it was just to kind of get a reaction to the cut and also get it out there on a great day. And it was wonderful. I mean, we got great reviews. We got sold out a lot of theaters. It was really, really fascinating. But the crazy part was, not only did we have to pay for the music still, and we had lots of effects we wanted to do. I mean, the difference between that cut in 2017 and this one is it's staggering.
It's night and day.
And I'm fortunate, and we are all fortunate for that having happened. I mean, had we gotten the money and released the 2017 cut, I mean, I'm sure people would have liked it, but I think it would have been tuned. That was the other real turning point for me. The 2017 screening and the trailer that we had for that attracted Star Wars geeks, for sure. Boys, right? Geeks, boys, Star Wars geeks. What it didn't attract, and in fact repelled, were their girlfriends, their moms, their sisters, or people that just weren't into Star Wars at all, who were like, I don't, they were like, you can't drag me. But they did drag them. And what happened was we found out that even that cut, which is, and the difference now between the two, that cut was far more appealing in many ways to women and mothers and sisters and girlfriends than it was to even the Star Wars fans, because at its base, it's not about Star Wars at all. Star Wars is a MacGuffin. It's a thing. It's a grail. It's almost a distraction from what his real conflict is, right? And that central conflict and that love story and the love of his friends and family for him is far more potent and powerful and interesting than he got to see Star Wars before anybody else. And we realized, and I realized as I was moving from that cut to this one, that's my movie. That's the thesis. The thesis is about when you don't trust your own feelings, and you don't use the Force and go with your feelings. If you don't have people around you to kick you in the ass, you'll fail unless you can somehow find it in yourself with no support to go forward. But I had more support than I ever knew until I knew that day, that final day. It says around the movie, I want you to think back to that day, that moment when you knew. That is the full circle thing of the film, is that he goes through the whole movie not knowing until that moment, that day when he knows. And he knows precisely because there have been people shouting it at him the whole time, and he didn't accept it. And he didn't believe it as much as he says he's confident, as much as he says he's got this. And if I could just get a chance, he's afraid. He's afraid. My old friend Ray Bradbury used to say, and I use this with any young person who's terrified of taking the step forward. He used to say about anything or any ambition, any fear you have not succeeding, he used to say, jump, build your wings on the way down. And he's exactly right. There's no other philosophy I can believe in than that. Because when I jumped in that Pinto, ultimately that's what I did. Didn't have anyone waiting. Herb Lightman was there, but he wasn't it's not like he could call up somebody and say, give this kid a job. He wasn't that guy. I would never have arrived at the cut you've seen now. And I never did until I lived enough and felt enough. And like I said, the passing of my mom, who loved the movie, even though she said, I was never that loud. And the whole family's like, you were louder. It took that long. And it really also took me watching film students rise and fall and succeed and fail, hopefully helping them navigate things that no one could help me navigate. And some of them navigated it, and some of them crashed and burned, and some of them are hugely successful now. I used to say to them, the only people I know that don't make it in the film industry are those who give up. I think the biggest problem is immediate gratification. I've heard students say, I'm going to go to LA for 6 months, a year, and see how it all works out. If I get a movie, great. If not, I'll move on. I'm like, okay, just save yourself a bunch of time and heartache and move on. Yeah. If you're not willing to wait 5 years or 10 years or 20 years to do that, then you don't really need to do it. You're just kind of thinking it'd be cool to do it.
So when do you have actual picture lock, or is it locked?
It's locked. As much as anything can ever be locked. There are people at MVD. I hope she sees this. There's this wonderful human being named Tiffany, who's the assets manager, who I have tortured over the last few months, saying, "Oh wait, I know I delivered the final lock, but we have a little change. Oh wait, every couple of days," and she's like, So it is locked for now. It will change. In fact, I did a special edition cut a little bit I was invited by Lucasfilm and ILM just a few weeks ago to go up to the Letterman Center and show it to the ILM folks who, are the perfect audience. And so I did a kind of a special extra Easter egg kind of cut, but we are going to do a special edition, and we'll have, I think on the special edition Blu-ray, we'll have the cut you've seen. And then we're going to have a much longer cut, not because I think the movie needs to be longer, but because there are these really wonderful endings to certain other aspects. Like Todd, the football player, has an ending that's not in the current cut. And there are one or two other little fantasy moments that are so special and fun that we'll do that cut. And so you can choose which you want to watch, but and then we'll have a bunch of other deleted scenes. Although the funny thing is there's been talk about doing it either 2 more films, The Empire Strikes Pat, that's 52590, when I'm just releasing Spaced Invaders. And then there's 52504, Return of the Alumni, which is where all my friends get together and make this movie. But there's also talk about a series where you would have John Francis Daley at age 38 in Hollywood in the 90s, in the midst of his career, with flashbacks to the 5 other hours of footage we have of John at 19 or playing 17, these great moments that you can intersperse with this Mad Men for the 90s, in cinema for geeks, which could be really cool.
I know we have to go soon, but you brought up Spaced Invaders, and I just have to tell you, and I think I told you this via Facebook before, but Spaced Invaders, one of the best end songs ever in the entire world. How did that come about? Because I used to clean movie theaters, and I loved cleaning the Spaced Invaders.
So David Russo may be certainly my favorite collaborator ever in terms of soundtrack work. We've done let's see, how many films? 3 films together. He's a genius, and he's got a great sense of humor. And he was actually introduced to me by a guy named Kirk Thatcher. Does that name ring a bell?
It doesn't offhand, no.
Okay, so Kirk is a big Henson guy. He directed a bunch of the TV things. He just did the Halloween special that they did. He just appeared in, what is it, Werewolf by Night? Is the crazy, Kirk Thatcher looking guy. So Kirk was the voice of Scout in a Can, Spiff, the little robot dude. And Kirk and I have known each other forever, and we worked together at the Henson Company and everything. And he introduced me to David Russo. And so when I was looking for an end title theme song, I said to David, "Can you do an end title theme song?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he didn't tell me, but he got Kirk involved. So Kirk's the one going, blah, 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 butthead. And, and he's the one, he's like, Martians are taking over. That's Kirk, right?
So good.
And Kirk is also the punk on the bus in Star Trek 4.
Okay. Yeah. I totally know now who he is. Yeah.
Because he was Leonard Nimoy's assistant. He used to work at ILM. He worked in Empire. He's all over the map, does everything well, really well. And he's just a great guy. So they presented the demo of this song to me, and I was like, David did. And I didn't even know Kirk had been brought in. But I heard it and I was like, oh my God, that's Kirk. I could tell, and we loved it. I mean, the funny thing is again, like I said, David Russo has a really great sense of humor. So there were all kinds of cues in the film and the soundtrack, which is being released. I'm actually doing an interview either tomorrow or the next day to do liner notes for a release of the Spaced Invaders soundtrack, which is
fantastic.
Great soundtrack. I mean, David's work on this film on 525. I mean, it's really a profound piece of work. There are cues in here that are just heartbreakers. There are ones that are really humorous, and there are ones that just take you into these wonderful spaces. And the funny thing is I kind of boxed him in by saying there are these 2 themes that Alan Parsons created on these songs that were actually from the 80s. But I thought, I don't care. It's a meta film. It doesn't matter if it takes from the future, the past. It doesn't, it's all a memory. And he took these themes and interwove them into the themes that he was creating and created this wonderful amalgam of all of them. And it just works beautifully. I'm just so proud of that soundtrack, which I think we're also going to have. I think MVD is planning on doing a release of that soundtrack as well.
Where can people go to find out where they can buy the Blu-ray, see the movie in theaters, all that fun stuff?
MVD's website is a good place. We're constantly announcing it, me and my social media, but MVD, I think, has all the scoop on that. I can tell you that the DVD and Blu-ray are already available for pre-order on Amazon, and it ships on the 22nd of November. It comes out on December 15th. It starts streaming on Showtime. And then all over the world, it's gonna be everywhere. So,
well, I'm so glad that people are finally going to be able to see the movie. And Mr. Johnson, it was such a pleasure talking with you.
It's great to talk to you again, Mike. And let's keep it up. Maybe we'll have more to talk about if we do this series or the sequels.
Sounds good. All right, you take care. Thanks again.
Bye, Mike.
my head.